Good morning. Today, today we are going to have a third set of webinars for next 4 days. We are now going to have on maternal health care. All 4 sets of this webinar will be on maternal health care. And today, Dr. Kirti Iyengar from UNFPA. She's a National Health Officer on the Reproductive Health and HIV. And Dr. Bimla Upadhyay from UN, she's also consultant with UNFPA. Both will be presenting you on the management of maternal health care during COVID. Okay, so now the whole set of series, the next 4 days will be on maternal health care. So I thank you for participating with us. Now I request Dr. Kirti to take over the series. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all the participants, and we are really glad that Indian Nursing Council has taken this initiative to reach out to all the nursing faculty all over the country, and we are really glad to be the part of this initiative. As you know, I will just start sharing my screen. Yeah, as you know, the whole country right now, the whole healthcare system is doing its very best to try to prevent COVID infection to spread, to prevent, to try to contain it, and to manage the cases which have come. And I know everybody is involved with that. However, we have to remember that there are several essential services. And a set of essential services have been recognized by WHO and various other agencies. And most important of them is the pregnancy and childbirth. The women who are pregnant, they will have to deliver. They do need the safe antenatal, intranatal, and postnatal care. And therefore, we have, in partnership with INC, we are supporting this webinar series. And I will just go to the next slide. So the objectives of our presentation is that we are able to maintain the maternal care during the COVID outbreak period. And we, as you know, yes, the corona infection has been spreading in India, but it is still, fortunately, it is not much. So if you see the prevalence, it is only 1.3 cases per lakh population as of today, which is really not a very high number. And therefore, majority of the women who will be coming to various health facilities for delivery or for ANC, PNC, they are going to be without any infection. So today's presentation, we are going to cover 2 topics. One is how to care for the women without suspicion of COVID infection. And the other is how to care for women who have a suspected or confirmed COVID. Because yes, we have to be prepared, because even if there are very few percentage, some might come to bigger hospitals, and we have to identify and manage them. So today we are, and the various resources have been developed in the recent last 3 to 4 weeks on managing maternal care and COVID. We have the Government of India guidance, then we have some guidance from AIMS, we have 2 guidance documents from UNFPA, and there is a guidance documents on essential health services from WHO. And what content we are going to share with you is based on all these guidance. So what is the objective of maternity care during the COVID pandemic? One is that most importantly, we want to protect our providers. As you know that in many countries, almost 5 to 10% of the people who were taking care of the COVID patients, they themselves became infected. Every day we keep on reading that, you know, some doctor or nurse got infected. They are the ones who are caring for the corona positive patients. So it is very important that we prevent the infection in the health workers. The whole health workforce, they include even the sanitation workers, nurses, doctors, ashas, everyone. Then, but at the same time, it's also important that we provide safe and effective maternity care to women. It's not that we do not provide the care, or if we cannot shut down our PHCs and CHCs and district hospitals and tell the women to just go away and deliver at home, because that is going to increase the maternal mortality. And therefore, we have to maintain and protect our maternal health systems. So, you know, I will just talk very simply about what do we do with the women who have no suspicion of corona infection. So what advice should we give to a pregnant woman who has no symptoms or there is absolutely no suspicion of corona infection? So the advice would be that she reduces, postpones or increases the intervals between her ANC visits. which means that a trained set of 10 visits, she might have 6 visits, she might have 4 visits, but it does not mean that she has no visits. But however, if there are some visits where we can manage without her physically come in, we should try to see how they can be done, and we are going to discuss that. We have to limit the visitors while in hospital. So we have to tell her that when she comes for any visit to the hospital, she should not bring too many people, because as you know, we do not want crowded in the hospitals. And if any risk assessment is done that identifies that there is any complication, whether potential or actual, then we need to ask her to come more often. So every woman should be told that whatever her circumstances, at least 4 minimum antenatal contacts should be there. Ideally somewhere around 12 weeks, 20 weeks, 28 weeks, and 36 weeks. Now, if there is a healthcare facility like a CHC or PHC or even a subcenter, how will they provide the ANC? So we have to gradually move from bigger hospitals to smaller healthcare facilities. As we know that most of the COVID positive patients are going to the larger hospitals like the medical colleges and district hospitals. So we have to advise the women to go to more peripheral level facilities like the PHC, subcenters, or even smaller private hospitals. Then one other advice is that we have to separate the physical assessment part from the discussion part or the inquiry part. So as you know, in each ANC, there are several things that we ask the woman, some questions about her health, her past obstetric history. So that is the inquiry part. And similarly, there is a whole lot of advice driven about diet, about the danger signs. So there is only verbal discussion. So that part is a little we have to keep it a little separate than the physical assessment part. The part where we have to actually touch the patient, touch the woman, we have to measure her blood pressure, or see her abdominal, do her abdominal palpation. All that part should be separated from the discussion part, and therefore that will help us to reduce the duration of the ANC visits, because we will be doing the physical examination a little quickly, and have the discussion we can take longer, because during the discussion we can sit at a 1 meter or more distance from the woman. In some places where it is possible and the matters that are discussed are not very confidential, we can even undertake the non-physical assessment part in the open environment. It means outdoors. So sometimes if there's a small PHC and it's possible to put up a chair and table outdoors, then at least some of the non-physical assessment part can be done outdoors, and then the woman can be taken indoors. And some messages and some assessments can even be done on the phone, on which I will be talking very briefly. Now, regarding the content of the antenatal care, we cannot compromise here, because whatever the type of contact all women need to have, we need to ask them all the proper information. What is about the danger signs? We have to ask her whether she's aware, and if she's not aware, we have to inform her. We have to have a discussion on the birth preparedness, which means that she should know that if she has labor pains, how will she go, where will she go, what transport she'll use, which facility she'll visit. And then we have to also do an assessment of the possible COVID symptoms, because we want to make an early assessment so that in case there is any risk or any suspicion, we should refer her to the facility, which is a COVID care center. At the same time, all the routine assessments of the pregnancy risk, all the examinations like the blood pressure, blood tests, abdominal palpation, whenever it is recommended ultrasound, all those have to be done. And accordingly, if the woman is identified to be high risk, then we have to individualize a plan and ask her to come more frequently for ANC visits. Now, what is the additional advice that we'll give? As I already said, that they can defer their ANC visits by a few weeks. What does it mean? It does not mean that we tell her that you don't come for ANC at all. It only means that suppose she came at 12 weeks, then instead of coming again after say 1 month, maybe she will come after 1.5 months. So maybe she can defer her antenatal visit by 2 to 3 weeks. And then, as I already said, that instead of going to a larger facility, she goes to a nearer facility like a PHC, CHC, or a private hospital. And for minor complaints, sometimes she has a very minor complaints like the cramps in her legs or constipation or minor nausea, she can ask the doctor or nurse on phone. However, if there is an emergency or if a high-risk pregnancy, then she should not wait at home, because if she delays the care, it can be life-threatening. And therefore, for any high-risk pregnancy, she should continue her normal visits as she would have done even otherwise. That's what we have to advise her. And of course, we have to also tell her about all the respiratory symptoms or any symptom which is suggestive of corona infection, like fever, cough, difficulty in breathing, aches, pains, nasal condition, sore throat, diarrhea, etc., that she should immediately seek care. And then when she goes to the hospital, she should try to maintain a minimum 1 meter distance from others. And then, of course, we have to also give her all the general advice that she should keep washing her hands frequently with soap and water. She should cover her mouth and nose. And then she has to keep the social distancing. She should not go in public transport. Yes, we have right now, we have the lockdown up to 3rd of May. After that, we do expect some relaxation. But even then, even after the relaxation, a pregnant woman should continue to maintain more social distancing. And the other things like she should continue to clean or disinfect all the surfaces like the tables, door handles, mobile phones, and other objects. That also we have to prepare. Now, what is the role of teleconsultation for antenatal care for non-COVID pregnant women? Now, there has been a lot of discussion nowadays about the teleconsultation. In fact, the government of India has even issued some guidelines on teleconsultation in general. They include all the other conditions. And UNFPA headquarters has released some guidelines on the teleconsultation for antenatal care. What it means is that for low-risk women or who have absolutely no risk, maybe instead of 10 antenatal visits or 8 antenatal visits, if they are managing with 4 or 6 antenatal visits, then 2 to 4 antenatal visits can be done through the teleconsultation. So they are in addition to the contact visits. And they are done only when any maternal observation or test is not needed. We don't have to do a physical examination of her. We don't have to do any tests. That also means that when she comes, we should try to do almost all the tests. What we mean is that it's not that today she comes and we do her hemoglobin and after 1 month then we do her VDRL or RPR. That's not that. We should try to do all the tests when she comes so that if suppose she skips one of the visits, it is all right. And then over phone, we can give her some of the advice like the daily fetal movement count, dietary advice, and I'll be talking more about it. So what are some of the types of questions? This is not a comprehensive list. This is based on an antenatal technical brief which has been released only 3 days ago by UNFPA headquarters of New York. That some of the basic questions that could be asked from her is, how's she feeling? What is her gestation? So we can always ask her about her LMP. And if she had an ultrasound, then what is her gestation? Whether any problems were identified during her first antenatal visit or last ANC visit. Whether she has any concerns about the growth of the baby. We can discuss the fetal movements with her, especially after 20 weeks or so. Whether she's eaten and drinking well, we can give her dietary advice. We can discuss whether she's taken her iron or not. And in case, as we know, several women do not tolerate the iron, then we have to change the preparation. We can give her that advice on phone as well. Then we can ask her about any signs of UTI or constipation. We can ask her about all the danger signs. And if she has any danger signs like any vaginal bleeding, severe headache, blood vision, fever, severe weakness, severe abdominal pain, any fast or difficult breathing, then we can certainly ask her to immediately come to the hospital. And then we can again discuss the birth preparedness plan with her. We can also ask about the stress or emotional assessment because nowadays, as you know, the stress has become very common. The gender-based violence has increased in the recent months, and because of the COVID outbreak, the gender-based violence incidence has increased, and we can ask her whether she feels safe at home. At least whatever referral or advice we have to give her to connect her to any social services, we can give her. We have to tell her when she has to come next, and what is the process to follow if she has any concerns or labor pains or any other danger signs. Now, what advice do we give her about the place of delivery? Now, we re-emphasize that it is very risky for a mother or baby to deliver at home because, as you all know, it's not easy to have a stillbirth attendant at home because there are various restrictions at home. So we should advise that she delivers in a health facility. And if she has no pregnancy complications, she can go to a health facility which is close to her house, like a CHC, PHC, or a private hospital. But if she has any health complications, then ideally we should advise her to deliver in a larger hospital which has facility for cesarean if it is needed. And then what should be the policy on discharge after delivery? There is a lot of debate nowadays on about when should we discharge her. As you all know, the normal recommendation by the government of India is that the woman should be discharged at 48 hours, minimum 48 hours after delivery, after a normal vaginal delivery. Now, the recommendation there is no clear recommendation, but what has been suggested is that if the condition of the mother and newborn is absolutely stable, then she may be discharged at 24 hours also instead of 48 hours. However, it is essential that we do a proper pre-discharge assessment. As you know, anemia, for example, is very common. Some women may have a hemoglobin of say 9 grams before delivery in the ANC period, but after delivery, because of the blood loss, her hemoglobin may have come down to 7 grams. And therefore, if we have to discharge the woman before 48 hours, we should do a proper pre-discharge assessment. Similarly, as you all know, the low birth weight is very common in India. Almost 20% of the babies are low birth weight. And therefore, we should make sure that the baby is fed properly, and only then we should discharge. But however, if both mother and baby are absolutely normal, we should be able to discharge her a little earlier than 48 hours. Now, postnatal care, as you know, we have a system of home-based PNC visits by ASHAs, which are known as HB PNC visits. So the frequency may be reduced if the woman and mother is of a low risk. Some of the questions, some of the PNC contact can also be through telephone, as we have just discussed about the ANC. However, we should advise the face-to-face contact, which can be in the health center for women and newborn who have any complicated or operative birth, or who have any pregnancy complications such as moderate severe anemia or prematurity or low birth weight, or any other problems with the infant feeding, mental health issues like postpartum depression or any other issue. So now comes the question that if there is a nurse or a doctor who's provided ANC or any care to the women, to the non-COVID women, women who have absolutely no symptoms, what kind of PPE should they use? So during the routine ANC, just a triple layered medical mask is sufficient. We don't really need very heavy duty PPE during a routine ANC visit for women who have absolutely no symptoms. And as we already mentioned, that when we are having a discussion with her or counseling or history taking, we should maintain a 1 meter distance from her. When we are during labor and during delivery time, the staff should wear a cap, a protective eyewear, and a trainer triple layered medical mask, gloves, apron, and boots and shoe cover. Majority of these things they already wear. Just the additional item is the protective eyewear and the triple layered medical mask. Now, one question which we did another webinar, and one question that was asked from us was that whether hydroxychloroquine is advised for the non-COVID patient care. So, as you know that nowadays there's a lot of discussion about hydroxychloroquine being used as a prophylactic. So the recommendation by ICMR is that the use of hydroxychloroquine as a prophylactic is not recommended for the health workers who are providing care to the non-COVID patients. However, if there is a staff who is providing care to the COVID patients, if we are directly coming in contact with the COVID patients, either suspected or confirmed, then they might wear it, they might use it, hydroxychloroquine, but that is also only at the recommendation and prescription of a registered medical practitioner, not on their own. And similarly, the people who are household contact of a confirmed case, they can also use prophylactic hydroxychloroquine. But it is not for everyone. It is not for even health workers if they are providing care to the asymptomatic people who are not suspected of having any corona infection. I will also review a very brief about what is the recent ministry guidelines on the management of pregnancy during COVID pandemic. It was released on the 14th of April, so it is very recent. And what has been recommended is that this Pradhan Mantri Surakshit Matritva Abhiyan and the VHND activities should be suspended till further instructions. And the ANC visits are to be provided on a walk-in basis as per the standard protocols. So as I already said that if somebody comes, they have to be provided ANC. It's not that the PHCs and CHCs cannot deny a woman that no, we will not provide you ANC or delivery or any complication of any obstetric emergency. And similarly, all the availability of the iron, calcium, etc. has to be ensured, various other medications also. And for high-risk pregnancy and follow-up, ASHA and ANM should even otherwise prepare a list of the women who are going to deliver in the next month or so, and then follow them up, especially for the high-risk women. And telephonic contact also Ashas and ANMs have to make, especially with the women who are going to deliver in the next month and those who are the high risk pregnancies. And regarding the intranatal services, it has been advised that the sub-center should maintain a due list of all the women who have the expected date of delivery in the next 3 months. And although we are advising all the women to deliver in the hospital, health centers or hospitals, but even then, wherever Asha thinks that a woman may not be able to reach the facility, she can provide the home delivery of misoprostol for delivery purposes and a disposable delivery kits. And each pregnant woman has to be told as to which facility she'll go to. They have to do planning by the ANM or by the community health officer or the PHCMO. And then all the districts have to prepare a list of the functional CMOT facilities. CMOT facilities are those where the cesarean and the blood transfusion facilities are available. And those lists should be available with the PHCs, CHCs or subcenters, so that if a woman comes and delivers in a subcenter or PHC and there is a problem and the referral needs to occur, they should know where to refer. The other very important part of the guideline is that there have to be 2 types of ambulances. One is a dedicated ambulance for non-COVID patients and one is a dedicated ambulance for the COVID patients. Because as you know, if a COVID patient has traveled in an ambulance and a few hours later or say the next day a non-COVID patient travels, there is a risk of infection. That the non-infected patient might get the infection through the ambulance. And therefore, the government has suggested that the ambulances are also kept separate and the non-COVID patient must be transferred only in the non-COVID ambulance. And of course, the blood banks and the blood storage units have to be kept functional. Now, regarding the postnatal services, this guideline says that the availability of the iron folate and the calcium tablets have to be ensured. And if there was any home delivery, then the ANM or the CHO should immediately visit the woman as soon as possible to assess the condition of the woman and newborn and give whatever medication is needed or provide a referral if needed. And in case there are any complications, then the referral has to be ensured. I also wanted to just bring to your notice that various agencies have been preparing a lot of IEC materials for pregnant women. So these are, for example, some posters prepared by UNFPA for which are both in English and Hindi, which is advice for the pregnant women and lactating women, those without symptoms as well as those with symptoms. So if any of them needs them, INC will be able to provide through email. That's it. Thank you. Now my colleague, Dr. Vimla, will be talking about the women who have a suspected infection.
Thank you, Dr. Kirti. It was a very useful session. I think people would have got a lot of learning experience what you have in your this thing UNFPA. They would have learned a lot today. And I think Dr. Vimla Upadhyay, you have to put your on. You have to start the video, please. Dr. Vimla.
Hello.
Yeah, please put your, yeah, we can see you now, ma'am. Thank you.
Join. Am I audible, Bharti? Can you just confirm that?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible and you can be little, your voice needs to be little higher tone, otherwise it's fine. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So now am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I was going through the questions in the last session and there was some request of speaking in Hindi. And secondly, people were asking what is ANC. So I just wanted to know, Bharti, before I start the session, is there any concern around it?
No, ma'am. Some people, I mean, this is too much. ANC is antenatal care. I mean, they should know about it. I think you can go on. But sometimes they don't understand. Some GM students will be there. They may not understand the abbreviations.
Okay.
So you can just tell out the abbreviated form.
Okay, sure. So I'm starting the presentation. And good morning to all of you. So there were some questions about transmission of the virus, effect on the pregnancy in the last session. This will be taken care in the present session. And in this session, we will be discussing the management of a suspected or a confirmed COVID-19 positive pregnant and lactating woman. Just give me a time. I'm not able to move the slide. Give me a moment, please. Bharti, can you confirm my slide is moving or not?
No, ma'am, we haven't received your email. We have not received the PPT, I mean.
But I'm trying to share the screen. Am I not? Is it not possible to share my screen?
No, you can, you can.
We can't see your screen, Dr. Bimla. Now,
Yeah, now it is coming now.
Is it coming now?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
So now it's visible, no?
Yes, it's visible.
COVID-19 pregnant and lactating women.
Madam, we are not able to see your PPT again.
Okay,
Please share the screen. Please share the screen.
I have shared the screen. There is some problem. I'm not able to figure it out. Is it visible now?
It says it's shared the screen, but we are not able to. Hello, Dr. Bimla. Hello. Hello. I think there's some problem with the internet. Dr. Kirti, if you can just help us around.
Issue. Now I have connected again. Is it visible now?
Yeah, you're visible now. Yeah. We can see you now.
And the slide is visible?
No, ma'am.
So I think I have to share it again. Just wait, there is some connectivity issue over here, so I'm facing this problem. Okay, let me just try once more, and I will. Is it now visible?
No,
Is
ma'am.
the
Your
slide-
screen, no, it says Dr. Imla Upadhyay has started screen sharing, but we cannot view it.
so far the slide is not visible. It just says Dr. Bimla Upadhyay has started sharing. But the screen is like, we can't see the PPT right now. Yeah. Yeah, I will wait a minute. Huh? So should I just start? Bharti, I will share her screen.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Dr. Imla, you have to stop the sharing then.
We can take some questions in case there is delay, because there are a lot of questions coming in from the first presentation.
Dr. Kirti, if you would like to say something on it.
I'll just share her screen. Huh? 1 second.
Okay.
There's some connectivity issue at my end. Just sorting it out.
Yes, sir. Oh. Bharti, can you see the screen now?
No, ma'am.
Oh.
It's same problem. Dr. Keating has started screen sharing, it says. I think, ma'am, let's take a
Bharti,
quick answers. Yeah, by that time you can email me your this thing so that I can start sharing.
My presentation, Bharti.
Yeah, you email it to me, ma'am.
Okay, just time to send it.
Yeah. Dr. Kirti, can you take the question answers by that time?
Bharti, I've sent my
Right,
presentation.
ma'am. Right, ma'am. Right, ma'am.
Bharti, did you receive my presentation?
No, ma'am, I'm still waiting. Dr. Kirti, if you can take the question answers by that time.
Okay. I'll do that. Yeah.
You can read, no? Your own.
Yeah, I can read.
Please. Huh?
Yeah. Actually, Bharti, many of these questions would have been answered by Dr. Vimla's presentation. So what I was requesting you was that you have PPT of Dr. Vimla. Would you like to share the screen?
I'm doing that, ma'am. I'm doing that.
Yeah, because many of these questions have been answered. So a couple of questions I have, which are like one of the questions is, can hydroxychloroquine be given in pregnancy as prophylaxis to non-suspected women? So no, there is no need to give it to non-suspected women as a prophylaxis, because it is not to be given unless there is some reason to give it. And then somebody has asked about ANC. What is ANC? So that is antenatal care, which is the care to be provided during pregnancy. Then 1 second. My screen is not moving well. Yeah.
Okay, now can Dr. Vimla, you can see our slides now? You can see the slides? Yeah, okay, fine. Dr. Kirti, now I think I request Dr. Vimla to take the session.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So we start the session, and I'm sorry for the technical glitches which we experienced. I hope we will be able to answer many of your questions of the last session, because we are going to talk about how to manage confirmed or suspected or confirmed COVID-19 positive pregnant and lactating women. Next slide, please. Next slide. So what are the key facts on virus and its relation with pregnancy? There was one question about, are pregnant women more susceptible to COVID-19 infection? So we all know this is a new strain of virus which is causing this infection. And the disease, as we know, with disease, and because it was found into the air, like we found this virus in 2019, so COVID-19 is the name. It is isolated from respiratory secretions, feces, and vomit. Pregnant women are not more likely to contract the infection, and the chances of a pregnant woman getting infection is equal to a general population. It's not that pregnant women are more susceptible, but the condition could be more worse in pregnant women because there are some physiological changes in pregnancy, and relatively the immunity of a pregnant woman is suppressed. It's a low immunity condition because of the pregnancy, which makes the infection more the severity is more in a pregnant woman. But otherwise, susceptibility, like the chances of the woman getting the infection equal to the general population if she does not observe the basic protective measures, or there are she has contacts in the family, or she is exposed to infection, then she may contract the disease. Otherwise, there is no additional thing which makes her susceptible. But the severity, yes, of course, pregnancy can cause infection. Condition of the woman may get worsened because of the pregnancy. There are no evidences of a vertical transmission. That is, there was a question where you were asking that can the virus be transmitted from the mother to the fetus? No. Currently, there are no evidences of a vertical transmission, and the disease not aggravated by pregnancy unless it is associated with comorbidities. Like if there are existing respiratory, cardiac, or metabolic disorders or immunodeficiencies, then if we see in general population, then the disease is very much aggravated, and the chances of morbidity and mortality is more if there are associated conditions, like if she is asthmatic or she has a cardiac condition, which could be anything from congenital to malformations to like cardiac, like she may be a cardiac patient, or if there are some liver or kidney related diseases, or she is suffering from immunodeficiency conditions, like in conditions like she is HIV positive, or she has low immunity because of some cancer she is undergoing chemotherapy. So these are the conditions where her disease the infection could be leading to mortality and extended morbidity. Next, Bharti. Bharti, can you move the slide? Hello? Hello?
Yes, I'm trying, ma'am. It is not moving here also, this problem. I do not know.
Okay.
You can go on, ma'am. I'll try by that time. You can go on.
Okay. So let me just. So the next thing which is of importance is what is the effect of the condition. What is important in the maternity care if the woman is COVID positive? We have to provide her, it's her right, we have to give her respectful maternity care and high quality care, which starts from the antenatal period when she is pregnant, through the intranatal and like during delivery, and the newborn postnatal, where she is breastfeeding the baby, and at the same time, because she is going through a very different kind of situation with COVID-19 infection. So her mental health, which needs to be taken care of. So these are, we have to give a woman-centered, respectful, skilled care, which includes the obstetric care, fetal medicine, neonatal care, as well as mental health and psychological support, so that she is ready, and with the readiness from the maternal and neonatal complications which may happen due to the infection. So what are the signs and symptoms of COVID-19 in a pregnant woman? They are as similar to any general population. So, and in majority, it's more than 80% or around 80%, up to 80%. It is a very mild flu-like condition, which could be cough, sore throat, or fever. Fever would be around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And in critically ill, the signs would be tachypnea. The respiratory rate would be more than 30 per minute, and hypoxia. saturation would be less than 93%, and when we do the imaging, the X-ray chest would show more than 50% lung involvement. So these are the critically ill women. And in immunocompromised and elderly pregnant women, we may also see fatigue, malaise, body ache, nausea, and diarrhea. So these could be the presenting symptoms when they are immunocompromised. They have low immunity condition. And in very severe cases where we may need ventilatory support, there will be shortness of breath, or which we call as SARI, the severe acute respiratory illness, pneumonia, and marked hypoxia. So when we suspect COVID-19 to be a woman is suffering, if there are signs and symptoms suggestive of COVID-19 infection, the woman should be provided with face mask and treated in a dedicated treatment area separate from other patients wherever possible. So, Bharti, are you able to show the slide now? Hello? Hello? So we next go to what is the advice you will give to the suspected or a confirmed COVID-19 pregnant woman. For mild cases where there are mild symptoms, she has only flu-like symptoms, we say to her, do not panic and contact her maternity care team wherever she is going. And if the symptoms are severe or urgent and related problems of pregnancy, there are some problems which are emergency problems during pregnancy, they have to contact a designated hospital immediately. So how do they contact? Do not make them to attend a routine clinic. Like routine antenatal care clinics should be avoided. Ask them to attend a designated initial assessment where we call triage, and where screening area is there. We separate the suspected cases, and then we guide them to the area where they need to be going, like whether they are in labor or they need ICU attention or something like that. And about the use of a transport, how she should be going to a facility. Ideally, she should be using a private transport. And if it is not available, or if it is not feasible, then she may call the ambulance. There are two types of ambulances which are available. One is for the transport of a non-COVID patient, and other is for a COVID patient. So they should inform the caller that what is the current status, whether she is confirmed case, suspected case, and or if she is non-COVID, then in that case, accordingly, the hospital which is sending the ambulance will handle her condition. So next slide, Bharti. So what are the effects of COVID-19 on fetus? So this was one of the questions. As we discussed earlier, there is no chance of a transmission from mother to the fetus, but also at the same time, there are certain conditions which may lead to increase of certain risks during pregnancy. But with COVID-19, there is no evidence that there is an increased risk of miscarriage or early pregnancy loss or a preterm birth. There are few cases where we have seen preterm birth, but it is not clear whether they were spontaneous because of the women may have or otherwise experienced, or it is whether they were iatrogenic, the hospital knew some conditions which led to the preterm birth. But as such, because of the COVID-19 condition, there is no increased risk of preterm birth, and there are no increased risk of uterine fetal infection, congenital malformation, and it does not affect the growth of the baby, and there is no transmission to the genital fluid. Next slide, please. So what ANC advice will you give to a suspected or a confirmed COVID case? For antenatal contact, that is before delivery contact, we have to delay all recommended routine antenatal appointments, which are ultrasound for growth scans or the glucose tolerance test, which we give during the antenatal period, the oral glucose tolerance test, or the antenatal care appointment. These are all delayed until the recommended period of isolation, the 14 days isolation, and for all these appointments. They can be done once she is recovered from the infection. Or and if there are concerns of well-being of the woman, or if there are the fetus, if she has some concerns about herself or the fetus, then she should contact the maternity team. In addition, if there are any complication, additionally, she should be provided appropriate, like the complications have to be handled at an emergency basis, and to provide her counseling and information what are the potential risks or adverse outcomes if the pregnancy during the this pregnancy, about the routine complications. So next slide. So how to assess a suspected case? If she is to be, like we discussed, that it has to be a multidisciplinary approach. There should be an infectious disease specialist or a medical person with appropriate training, or a medical specialist, whoever is designated for this purpose. And obstetrician and a neonatologist. They should assess the severity of the infection. And they should see whether there is an elevated or a moderate risk, and if it is not elevated risk and moderate risk, then the woman should be advised for home isolation for 14 days and clinically self-monitoring of her condition. And if the condition worsens, she has to come to the hospital for to the designated COVID care facilities, or the COVID where there are facilities for handling severe cases. And the obstetrician has to check for any obstetric emergency or labor or a delivery related issues. Next slide. So what is the protocol for assessing the woman with respiratory symptoms which are suspected for COVID-19? Test on priority. The pregnant woman should be offered test on a priority basis, and if required, admission should be provided to her. And until the test result is available, she should be treated as a positive case. She should seek any additional advice in case of uncertainty. Investigate and treat as a suspected case if it is an emergency. If the woman is attending KMC clinic with coincidental symptoms, like she may have fever because of ruptured membranes, or she may have fever because of some other infection, or a common other influenza, which is not COVID-19. So in that case also, the woman needs attention, and she should be treated as a positive or a suspected case until the COVID results are available. And she should be advised not to attend a routine ANC. If she has to go, either if the symptoms are mild, then the telephonic contact to the maternity team, or there are designated places where separate clinics are available for attending to such clients. And advised to continue scheduled routine care if she is well. If she is not having any problem, then she can go for a routine care. Next. So how will you manage a confirmed or symptomatic case? So home isolation if she is asymptomatic and if there are no comorbidities, or if there is no obstetric emergency. So in that case, if the woman, even if she is COVID positive, then she should be advised home isolation and fetal monitoring after 2 weeks for growth, and after when she is out of home isolation, the fetal monitoring should be done, and growth ultrasound for growth and Doppler should be advised. And when she recovers from her isolation, she is out of the isolation and she has recovered from the COVID condition, the antenatal care should be arranged after 14 days of the acute illness. When she has recovered after 14 days, then she should go for the antenatal care. And again, similarly for her fetal growth surveillance, for fetal growth monitoring, and antenatal ultrasound should be advised when she is out of the isolation period. Next. So how will you manage a suspected case who are not in labor? If she is not in labor, but she requires admission. So in that case, admit her, and you have to follow all the IPC protocols, and which includes immediate transfer to the identified isolation room where she is suspected or a positive case, immediately transfer her to a isolation room, which is designated for care of such clients, and don an appropriate PPE, which is as per recommendation. And the donning and doffing of the PPE, there is a guideline to be followed, and that has to be strictly in case of the woman is suspected whether if she's pregnant and labor, the provider has to follow the same guidelines. And testing to be done urgently. The nasopharyngeal swab is to be taken, and do not delay the obstetric care in order to test COVID-19. We shouldn't wait for the testing, then provide her, because she is in an emergency, she needs an admission. So her obstetric care should be given a priority, and the testing at the same time should be done. But until the test results are available, she should be treated as a positive client, and all the IPC measures and the PPE protocols have to be followed. A multidisciplinary approach has to be followed. The obstetric, neonatal, and intensive care specialists should be available for care of such women. Next. So, how will you manage a symptomatic suspected in a labor room or an obstetric emergency when she has come as an emergency? So, triage and screen needs to happen for all the women and their birth companions before entering the health facility. After she has initial registration, she goes to a triage room where her screening happens, and the screening will tell us where she has to go, whether she has to go to the labor room, she has to be shifted to ICU, or she has to go to a OT. So the triage is a single linear approach to enter to the facility, and there has to be a single entry and exit for such facilities. So when she is admitted in the hospital, report to a local authority responsible for COVID in the district and test for her COVID-19 as per the current protocol, follow IPC guidelines, and manage as per the obstetric protocols. Don't change because of her COVID condition. And women who have symptoms of COVID-19 and are experiencing any pregnancy-related complications need to be seen separately from others in an isolated room, and if possible, if there is at the beginning or end of the clinic. If there is no isolation room and you are suspecting that the woman is positive, then she should be examined separately from the rest of the women to lower the chances of transmission to the maternity care provider and other women who are attending the care. It's best that she is given a checkup in a isolation room. Next. So if she is a confirmed case and you know that the symptoms are very severe in this case, before admission, assess for her requirement for ICU admission, where you will see her systolic and diastolic BP, and if the systolic BP is less than 90 or more than 160 millimeters of mercury, diastolic BP is around 100 millimeters of mercury, heart rate is less than 50 or more than 120, and respiratory rate is less than 10 or more than 30, and you will see her oxygen saturation at the room if it is less than 93, 94. Oliguria, as per the urine output input, you will see if she is oliguria, having oliguria, maternal confusion is there, agitation, or if she is non-responsive, or if she is a known case of a preeclampsia, reporting a non-remitting headache or a shortness of breath. She is in the preeclamptic symptoms, headache and shortness of breath. If these all are present, then it is a need for ICU admission, and these are early maternal early warning criteria. Based on the maternal early warning criteria, she has to be assessed for ICU admission. There are some other criteria where we see if the systolic BP is less than 100, respiratory rate is more than 22, she's altered sensorium. In that case, ICU admission should be provided. Severe failure criteria, where we see that the woman is in septic shock, there is organ failure, then it is an emergency and the cesarean section should be considered in this case. Next. Bharti, next slide, please. So, during labor, when she has landed in labor facility and she's the confirmed case, the labor, you will see if the labor is confirmed, and continue the labor in an isolation room and do not mix with other women. Provide as per the standard care, but you have to ensure that you follow the full PPE guidelines and the IPC guidelines should be followed. Conduct a full maternal care, fetal assessment, and individualize the birth of the mode of the birth based on her obstetric indication. Assess for severity in consultation with the medical specialist. Monitor temperature, respiratory rate, and oxygen saturation. Although all these care parameters will be fulfilled by the medical team, but you should be aware as a nursing staff, as a support staff, our continuous electronic fetal monitoring has to be done. The CTG has to be given to such women, and the obstetric care should be as per the standards, and it should not be compromised because of our COVID condition. Like delayed cord clamping is there is no contraindication because it is not transmitted through the feto-maternal transmission is from the mother to the fetus transmission is not there, so delayed cord clamping can be provided, and prioritize her maternal stabilization and other emergencies like if she's preeclampsia, eclampsia. So all those conditions have to be stabilized irrespective of her COVID condition. But for the COVID condition, we have to take care of appropriate PPE and the IPC protocol. Next. For doing elective cesarean section, it is safe to delay the C-section, and if it has to be performed, then as a routine, like how we do for based on the indications of maternal and fetal condition, and the normal practices have to be followed. Follow all precautions for suspected and COVID-19 in case where elective cesarean birth cannot be delayed. So if it is not delayed, so we have to follow all the precautions. Epidural and spinal anesthesia should be used, and GA should not be used in these cases. In the post-natal management, close contact and early and exclusive breastfeeding helps the baby to thrive. So women with a COVID-19 condition should be supported in breastfeeding safely, giving her skin-to-skin care, and she should share a room with her baby. Keep the woman and the healthy infant together if there is otherwise no if the baby does not require a neonatal ICU care, then the woman and the baby can be kept together. Test for all babies of the confirmed and suspected women for COVID-19. Closely monitor all the babies born to the COVID-19 positive women. Follow up and keep them under surveillance even after discharge. And recently, you must have I think today or day before there is a 1-month-old baby who has been confirmed case of COVID-19. So and then the mother is feeding the infant. Next slide, please. Next, Bharti, next slide. So Bharti, yes. So what is the advice when the baby is being fed? So all the symptomatic mothers who are breastfeeding use appropriate respiratory and hand hygiene. Respiratory, they have to use the mask. They have to, before handling the baby and after handling the baby, they have to clean their hands. The proper hand hygiene should be followed. And the mother, if she is very ill, if the condition is severe and she cannot breastfeed, then expressed milk can be given, and with proper respiratory and hand hygiene. And because the mother is feeding and at the same time she is infected, so her mental condition is not very, she needs a mental support and psychological support from families and the communities and the health workers. And especially as health workers, we have a very big role in ensuring that she is duly supported, enough supported during the breastfeeding, because she has come out of a double trauma because of the infection. So we have to be very supportive in taking care of breastfeeding practice. maintain the breastfeeding. Next. So what are the important preparedness requirements for the health facilities when we are dealing with pregnant women who are COVID-19? I will take you through what are the hospital and as a health service provider, what precautions we have to take. Next. So there is a three-pronged approach when we are giving maternity care for a COVID-19 positive client. Protect the maternity care providers and maternal health posts. That is the priority. We have to protect ourselves, then we can give a good care. So the foremost thing is how to protect ourselves. Second is to provide safe and effective maternity care to the women and maintain to protect the health system also, that we provide appropriate care. Next. So first thing is this concept of triage, where we ensure that the place of triage should be having adequate space for at least 1 meter distance between the staff screening and the patient who is entering. So the staff who is screening the women, taking her vitals, should maintain a 1 meter distance. The waiting room chairs should be 1 meter apart. The family members should wait outside the triage area to prevent triage area from overcrowding. Then there should be a clear signage for symptoms and for direction. And maintain a one-way flow for the patient and also for the staff. Those who are in the infected zone should not come into a non-infected area. And there should be a positive air pressure in this area. Negative air pressure in the triage area. And all the patients and the women who are in the triage area should be using masks if there is any symptom, or if they don't have any symptom, the mask use should be, and the PPE after that, the PPE use when they enter to the infected zone. And this area should be cleaned between consultations, after consultation, and so Lysol or a bleaching agent should be used for cleaning of this area. Next. So what is the maternity care providers should be ensuring at a facility which provides care to a COVID-19 positive pregnant women? They have to train the staff, whoever the staffs are posted in the facility for care of the women, and manage visitor access. IUC should be appropriately placed. All the VPA and IPC supplies should be available at all the points. The transport vehicles should be instructed to notify to the facility before the arrival of a woman. Clean and disinfect internally by cleaning or transport. The vehicle which is used should be cleaned and disinfected by cleaning or a transport staff using PPE and proper bleach and anti-infected agents. Hand and respiratory hygiene and social distancing should be maintained by them. Early recognition of the women suspected to be COVID-19 and rapid isolation of a confirmed or suspected case should be followed, and immediate notification to the authorities, assessment by a multidisciplinary team. So this is one aspect. Then the operation theater preparedness for and the labor room preparedness. They should select the labor room before the woman is delivered and after the woman is delivered, and in between two women should be thoroughly cleaned. And the staff should be carrying out the non-elective procedures, the OT, because we cannot have multiple OTs. We cannot have OT for a COVID-19 woman. So the COVID-19 woman should be scheduled for operation either at the before beginning of beginning of the routine cases or at the end of the OT day, and between them they are done with the proper cleaning of the area should be done using full precautions, and minimize the number of OT staff in the OT and ensure them to wear proper PPE. So what are the PPE guidelines? Environmental cleanliness. We have to disinfect all the space, the surfaces, equipments in the labor room, antenatal, postnatal, and in newborn care area. Monitor and manage the health service providers for ANC, OPD, labor room, and OT ward staff. The process of conducting temperature check prior to the staff entry to the shift should be ensured, and we should see that all the staff who are coming to the for the care of these women are not infected, and they should be screened properly on a daily basis before they enter the shift. Next. So what are the guidelines for protective personal equipment? The provider who is in direct care of women should have a long-sleeved gowns, a surgical mask for all patients for interaction, or an N95 or P2 mask, which if there are involvement of aerosol, like we are using suction machine, or administration of nebulization is being done, or CPR is being done, then the surgical mask or an N95 mask should be used for such doing such procedures. We should have a proper eye protection, gloves. And during second and third stage of labor, in addition to the surgical mask, plastic apron, eye protection, plastic apron and gloves need to be worn. For maternity care to a woman without symptoms of coronavirus in a facility, the WHO recommends that PPE to be used according to the SOP, and if she has no symptoms and she is not, like we discussed in the earlier session, there is no requirement. It should be as per the routine protocol. Next. So the key messages are: the pregnant woman should follow the same recommendation as a non-pregnant woman for avoiding exposure for COVID-19 infection. Antenatal care should be through either telephonic or a video conferencing, providing quality care during the pandemic. Track system of symptom severity and obstetric emergency should be followed, and a multidisciplinary approach to the management of a suspected or a confirmed case should be done. So thank you so much. Bharti, I'm sorry for the initial problems in starting this session, so we end the session.
Oh, ma'am, thank you so much. It was very, very, very good PPTs. Others, but I missed that. It was really done a very well made and very well informed to the participants. I think they must be very happy. Otherwise, sometimes audio and this PPTs, if it doesn't coincide, they're not able to understand. Thank you very much. I know participants should be able to understand because of the lockdown. We are all at home, and I'm in the office today, but there will be a lot of issues on the technology. I think the participants should understand all those things. Anyway, thank you so much.
So there are a few questions which are there. Should we go to them, or what should we do now?
I'll take only some questions, ma'am, because of the lack of time, which are relevant for today. Some people are, they could have given which are not relevant. So we'll look into the which are relevant, and then I'll pass it on to question and answers, and which if we can make as a FAQ, so that we can post on our website later on.
Okay.
So if there are any urgent questions that you want to discuss in the next 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, I'll take that, ma'am. I'll take. Dr. Kirti, there is one question. Can the infection be transmitted to baby during the vaginal delivery as the baby comes in contact with mother body fluids?
Yeah, so see, this is a new disease, only 3.5 months old, and till now, whatever studies are there, whatever evidence is available, that does not show any transmission from mother to the baby, either through the placenta or through the vaginal fluids or blood. However, as we are speaking, the evidence is still emergent, and although most of the evidence is that there is absolutely no risk, and also through the breast milk, there is no transmission of virus from mother to baby. So as of now, there is no evidence. But however, there have been one or two small studies which are saying that there could be a probable transmission, but majority of the evidence says there is no transmission.
I think you have answered this question, but maybe it was not a very, clarity was not in the audio. Can you again answer this question? Can hydroxychloroquine be given in pregnancy as prophylaxis to non-suspected women?
Yeah, so women who are not suspected, they need not be given hydroxychloroquine as a prophylaxis, because hydroxychloroquine is recommended only to certain groups of people. They include the health workers who are coming directly in contact with the positive patient, or they are the family members of a positive patient, but they are not to be given just as a prophylaxis to anyone. So pregnant women need not be given this.
Thank you, ma'am. And what can the complications to be the fetus in a COVID positive mother?
So I think Dr. Bimla has addressed this, but very briefly, what I would say is that so far the evidence does not show very clearly whether the baby is affected in any way. There have been a few studies which have shown that like 30 to 35% of the babies, there was prematurity. It means there was a preterm birth. However, that is still like just one or two studies. It is not a confirmed evidence. Dr. Bimla, you would like to add anything to that?
I think you have added sufficiently. There are no evidences as such, very strong evidences from this.
Mariam, there's one more question. How to provide maternity care to a pregnant woman by health workers in a sealed building?
Yeah, so what the situation that where I said that some of the things could be done outdoors is only where it is possible. Like in a CHC or PHC, generally they are, you know, single storied buildings and they have some outdoor space. Now there are several cities where in urban areas where there are buildings are sealed. So their other advice would be to keep about the same that social distancing norm during the time of history and the counseling part. Because as I said, the whole visit has to be divided into two parts. One is where we are physically touching the woman or measuring her BP. The other is where we are just stating the history or giving her counseling or advice. So that advice part, we have to maintain a 1 meter distance. The provider should be wearing her 3-layered mask. And so that's it. I think the 1 meter distance criteria to be used. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. And one more question is, what should be the discharge procedure of a C-section mother during COVID-19?
Yeah, so if the mother was not suspected to be having any COVID infection and she undergoes a C-section, then she could be discharged if she is absolutely fine, she and her baby, a little earlier. Like some hospitals follow a 7-day discharge policy. So maybe some could discharge maybe 2 days earlier. The UNFPA guidance which has come for maternal care, that says that in certain settings where women have all sorts of, you know, transport available, which means that they should have a car at their house, they should have a mobile, they could be discharged even after 3 days. But in Indian settings, because 70% of the population lives in rural areas, we would say that that should be generally, you know, seen how the woman can reach in case she has a problem. So anywhere between 3 to 7 days, she could be discharged depending on the provider.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. And if a woman is COVID positive, whether to feed her baby. So what are the chances of the baby getting the COVID? I think Dr. Bimla.
The virus does not get transmitted by breast milk. So if the woman is properly maintaining the hand hygiene and respiratory hygiene, the baby is secure, he is not at risk. But however, if these things are not being followed, then yes, the woman can transmit the virus to the baby.
Okay, one more question is, what are the medication for a COVID positive pregnant woman who is in her first trimester?
Medication for COVID-19 woman who is in first trimester.
Yeah.
So the routine, if she is positive, she has to be routinely treated as per a non-pregnant woman. First trimester, the due diligence of giving her medication, because this is the time when congenital malformations can happen. So we have to take care of giving medication to the woman. HCQ is not to be advised to such women. Azithromycin as such, this is a treatment protocol which needs to be decided as per the suggestion of an obstetrician who is taking care of the woman, and there are no special medicines to be given during this time.
Just wanted to add here that ultimately the care of the mother is more important, and if the woman deserves to get some treatment withdraws of her condition, then that will be prioritized.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And one more question is there. What about tetanus injection, tetanus toxoid injection schedule?
That will remain as such. It will not change.
And if she is positive and is in isolation, then after isolation, she can go for tetanus toxoid. And if she is visiting the facility for some issue, then at that time she can get it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vimla, Dr. Kirti. The questions almost are similar. We have many questions, but it looks almost everything is similar. And we'll have a video posted on our website today evening. So people should undergo once again this video. If there is any questions, then please come back on webinar q99@gmail.com so that we can answer your questions. Because many people I feel have not gone through the PPT properly or not heard you properly. I request all the participants to once again go through. We are putting on the YouTube, and I also request the participants to subscribe to our YouTube. If you subscribe, whatever we place it on the YouTube, you immediately will get one information that we have put the video on the YouTube. So please ensure that you watch it and see it again, because it's very, very, very informative, especially the maternal health care, whatever today we have discussed. So please go look into it. And now I over to the President, sir, if you want to make any comments.
I think one of the practical question, Dr. Kirti, you can explain, because many of the ANMs and ASHA workers nowadays, they are busy in survey. So how do we, I think what type of mechanism need to be developed to take care of the pregnant mothers? What communication system they should have to reach out to these pregnant mothers?
Actually, yes, most of the ASHAs or ANMs have been given lots of COVID related tasks. However, maternal health services are considered to be the part of the essential health services. And as per the latest guidelines of the Ministry of Health, the ASHAs and ANMs have to prepare a list of the pregnant women. And they have to at least link the pregnant women with the facility where they should go for ANC and delivery. So, of course, they have to stop doing the village health and nutrition days, which are done in the Anganwadis. But they have to at least contact the women, ask them about any danger signs, and at least ask them to go to the PHCs for their antenatal care.
Good. Any, Dr. Punita, you want to make any comment?
There are quite a lot of questions that have been asked. So some of them are cleared. I just want to make one point very clear in terms of mother and baby care. I tell you, a lot of questions related to breastfeeding, a lot of questions related to separation of the baby. But I think I would like to reiterate that as per the national guidelines, the baby is separated only in very special conditions when the mother is critically ill. Otherwise, it is recommended that babies with the mother, only thing is the mother has to be taught all the precautions that have been taken in terms of distancing, in terms of mask, in terms of hand washing, because the other benefits really outweigh the benefits otherwise. So that is what is very clearly spelled out in national guideline. That is one point. The second point is that regarding the testing, everybody had a lot of question in relation to testing, whether it is different amongst pregnant women, either suspected, confirmed, or asymptomatic. Is there any different way of testing by the Government of India guidelines? There is no, it said that there is no difference. They are done as per the general population, but the priority testing is given to all the women who are pregnant and also who has any history, symptomatic and asymptomatic with suspect or confirmed. So that is the only major comment that is guideline that is given in relation to the testing. I think these are the 2 points that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Dr. Sarojit, you want to make any comment?
So I think it is very important for the nurses to understand that the implication of this disease on maternal and the child health, and they have to not only understand themselves but also to train the other nursing personals under them, so that there are no repercussions because of this disease on maternal and child health mortalities and morbidities. I agree with Ma'am Punita when she said that mother and child are one unit, and this disease should not separate the two. It was a very good presentation, very informative.
Okay. Dr. Kirti, you would like to make any final point?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, although we do not have any data, but informally we have been hearing, all of you must be also getting reports that, some pregnant woman went to a facility and she was referred or she was not provided admission, and then subsequently either she or her baby could not survive. So we have all started hearing such stories. And the aim of today's presentation is to prevent such situations, because in the last 15-20 years, whatever gains India has made to reduce the maternal and newborn mortality, we should not lose them just because of these 2-3 months of COVID period. So it is a responsibility, especially those posted in the peripheral health facilities, to provide much better quality care. And that is the reason this whole series and this week is happening. And we all count on you to provide this information to as many people as possible. One small point I wanted to say, some of the people have asked in their question about what is GBV. So I just wanted to say that is known as gender-based violence. And in the recent months, it has been found that even otherwise around 25 to 30% women do report that they have been, there has been some violence against them by their partners. But now in the recent 1 to 2 months, it has increased. And we'll try to do one separate session after this week on some other suitable date on gender-based violence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we will definitely, as Bharti mentioned, that many of the questions which have been reflected, we'll try to capture it in the form of FAQs, and we'll be placing in our INC websites, so that the faculty and the students, especially our final year students, and for us, it's very important, because at any time they may be asked to take care in this emergency. So please, once again, go through these videos. And once you go through the videos, I think many of the questions which you have been asking has been cleared it. But even then, we will capture your questions in the form of FAQs, and we'll come back in the INC website. Thank you very much. Again, we'll meet tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kirti, Dr. Bimla, President Sir, Dr. Dilip Kumar, Dr. Punita, Dr. Savjit Kaur, Secretary, Indian Nursing Council, Madam Abra Pearl, and Bright Mary. Thank you very much. Again, we'll see all the participants tomorrow. We eagerly waiting for you also. So we do see everybody, and I expect that we will not abbreviate many in our PPTs, because students are not able to follow the abbreviations. So let's have a total in that, because it's easy for them to understand later on also. Okay, thank you very much. See you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Thank you.
Bye.